Hey, it's Denise. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I've been doing these last few days in terms of getting ready for winter, doing a little food preservation. As I've talked about before, I think it's important to have as little of your food in the freezer as possible, especially as we go into winter when there are going to be power outages. It's just a fact of life here where I live. So I prefer to have as much of my food shelf stable as possible. Now, what have I been doing to that end, you might say? Yes, I still get a kick out of my flashing color, like tentacle pens. I know, it's the small things in life. You have to find fun where you can find it. Anyway, a couple days ago, got my most recent order from Butcher Box. Almost said Butcher Block. That would be the thing that you work on like a counter. Butcher Box is the name of the subscription box. That is where I buy my meat now. I do not buy meat at the supermarket. Butcher Box, I like them because their meat is both ethically sourced in terms of they deal with primarily family-owned farms that have to meet requirements as far as ethical treatment, humane treatment of the animals, and also the health aspects that you would be concerned about as far as the diet the animals are fed, whether or not they're given antibiotics, whether or not they are not just started on grass, but they're grass-fed and grass-finished, which is an important thing to keep in mind. I've mentioned that in other videos about, when you're buying meat, how they can throw that grass-fed on there to make you think the animal got to live outside for the duration of its life, when really it was just started on grass. You want to see it say grass-finished as well. But back to what have I been doing this week. I like that on the inside of the box, they always have a sticker that lists everything that you ordered so that you can then sort of just check it off as you're unpacking it from that box full of dry ice. Your hands hurt. Your hands hurt by the time you just take that stuff out and put it in the freezer. That's how cold it is when it gets to you. So, what did I get so far, and what have I done with it, if anything? It's only been a few days. The first thing I did, the day it arrived, I left the boneless chicken thighs. I had 3 1-pound packages, and the stew meat, I had 4 1-pound packages. I left those out in the fridge, to let them start thawing the day it arrived, and I ended up raw pack canning them, pressure canning them, so that they are shelf stable. And basically, they're canned in their own juice that naturally comes out of the meat during the cooking process. So they're ready to go to be added to a recipe. In fact, today I ended up making chicken soup and used a can of chicken to add to it. I also used a can of carrots that I canned several months ago. It's really, I find, useful to have these things ready to go. You just need to microwave them instead of worrying about cooking raw meat or handling raw meat, or having expensive meat that you purchased go bad if the power is out for any period of time. Okay, next, today, the chicken soup. I ended up with 7 quarts of chicken in the most beautiful, golden yellow, almost hinting towards orange broth. And no, there are no artificial colors. I used, if you saw my It's Delish unboxing, I had gotten the dehydrated vegetables that are their soup starter, and I put them in with, now, I started out with 6 pounds of chicken thighs that did still have the skin and the bones. So last night before bed, I cut off the skin, cut the meat off the bones, and separated it into 2 bags because I knew I was going to make my stock, so I wanted to keep the bones. And there was quite a bit of meat on them because I'm no expert butcher at taking apart chicken thighs. I'm just going to put that right out there. So I knew there was plenty of meat on the bones and they would make a really good chicken stock. So I did that, cut it up, bagged it, and put it in the fridge last night. So this morning when I got up, I took the chicken meat, weighed it, saw that I had about 50, almost 52 ounces of meat. Figured I was looking at wanting to get 7 quarts of soup. So round it out, you're going to end up trimming a tiny bit more off as you go along. So about 7 ounces of meat into each quart of soup. So in the meantime, first thing in the morning, I had thrown the bones in with about 6 quarts of water, and then the It's Delish dried vegetables, which they have as a soup starter mix, which there's no seasoning, no salt, no preservatives. It is just dried red bell pepper, green bell pepper, carrots, and onions, dehydrated. That's it. So I put that in with the bones and the water and just let it simmer for about 5.5 hours. And by the time I strained it, it was this beautiful golden color. And I strained all the vegetables and stuff out. I just really wanted it to give flavor to the stock because I figured by the time you put through pressure canning, it would probably just kind of dissolve anyway, being that you pressure can meat for an hour and a half, in quarts. And I didn't want to just have like this powdery, pulverized little tiny pieces of vegetable. So I did strain all of that out to leave a clear broth. So I now have ready to go on my pantry shelves 7 quart-sized jars full of chicken, boneless chicken meat cut up into bite-sized pieces in this beautiful, delicious, very low sodium broth. I only put 2 teaspoons of salt in for the whole batch of the 7 quarts of soup. So to most people's taste, they probably will add a little salt to it. I personally am of the opinion that it's better to put less because you can always add more salt, whether for taste or health reasons, you're watching how much salt you put in your food. I always feel like I would rather people put less salt in, and I can always add it if I want it. And you may also be adding in things that have salt. So, like I said, mine is just chicken in this, and I'm holding my hand weird because I'm holding the cap to the pen. So I've got these quart-sized jars with this beautiful broth and roughly 7 ounces of chicken in each one, which is a lot of chicken for, that amount of broth. It gives you a nice amount of chicken in your soup. What we had today for lunch, I used the extra broth that I was left over after I filled my 7 jars as they were canning. I took the leftover broth. I took a pint-sized jar of just raw packed chicken that I had done a few months ago. I took a jar of carrots that I had done a few months ago, and I took some leftover peas that were in the fridge because my son, when he makes mac and cheese, just the basic, like out of the box, inexpensive stuff, he likes to add peas to it. So he doesn't use the whole can. So he had some in a plastic bag from yesterday. That's what he had made for lunch. So to my chicken soup today, we had peas, carrots, a little salt and pepper, and personally, I like a little sprinkle of grated Parmesan on my chicken soup. I just think it goes great in chicken soup. And again, that is something that has salt in it, so I wouldn't want my salt to be my salt. I wouldn't want my soup to be salty to start with, Or else when you add some of the other things in, you might be adding even more sodium to a soup that already has more than enough in it. So I tend to do my broths when I can my vegetables, any of that, I tend to do either no or very low amounts of salt. So what else am I still going to do with this stuff? I have the pork chops. I know exactly what I'm going to do with them. I have 2 packages of 4 8-ounce chops. So I have 8 large pork chops. What I usually do with these is in a pint-size canning jar, I'll trim off, they don't usually have a lot of fat. I'll trim off the fat, cut them into cubes, put them in with some tomato sauce, pressure can those. My son loves that. He would eat that, I think, almost every day, because I can't keep that on my pantry shelves. As soon as I make it, he will start eating that for lunch or dinner pretty much every day until he goes through them. So within the next couple days, I'm going to thaw that and can that. I did get a pound of breakfast sausage, which we'll probably do that. Usually I'll thaw that and make breakfast, like either make sausage patties out of it, or I'll fry up some of it just loose, like, because it comes just the ground breakfast sausage. It's not in like links or patties. So I'll just fry some up loose and then add that to like scrambled eggs. So that's something we always use. Their breakfast sausage is delicious. And again, they also do not put a ton of, there's no preservatives, there's no unpronounceables, there's, you know, like salt, pepper, and sage pretty much is what's in their breakfast sausage. I got 1 pork tenderloin, which again, something my son really likes. I can do that in the crock pot or in the oven. He'll eat that with some mashed potatoes or some carrots or peas, or that's just an easy thing to cook. Probably the crock pot is just the easiest way to stick it in there, leave it a couple hours, it pretty much just cooks itself. Got 3 1-pound packages of chicken wings, so we'll probably be doing fried chicken wings, which is our favorite way to eat chicken wings. Just sort of do them as a treat once in a while. Got 1 package of bacon, which their bacon is always very tasty, so once in a while for breakfast we'll, like, and again, I'll cook the whole thing, and maybe we might use half of it for breakfast, and then we'll have it left to put on sandwiches or the next day for breakfast. The last time I made meatloaf, I ended up using some bacon in that, which gave it a kind of cool taste. So there's always things, I mean, let's face it, you can always find things that you want to put bacon on. And last but not least, their apple Gouda sausage, which is something you have to keep an eye on. It's not something that they always have, but when it shows up as a special, I always add it. It is my son's, as he put it, absolute best sausage he ever ate in his life. So I always buy like 2 packages of that for the month if it's available, if it's one of the specials that they have and I get the opportunity to grab it. So that's another easy one. Just, you know, do them right on the stove in a frying pan and serve them with a vegetable, and he's thrilled. Really easy meals. So some of it's still in the freezer. Like I said, the very first day I kept out the stuff that I wanted, you know, the stew meat and the boneless chicken thighs that were going to be easy to just raw pack the next day and get processed. The slightly more time consuming chicken thighs that still, you know, the 6 pounds that still had the bones and the skin, I left that for the next day to do, being that it was going to be a more time consuming preparation. But again, very happy. Now have 7 quart-sized jars of awesome soup. And like I said, you can add whatever you want into it when the time comes that you're ready to have it. today, I think I forgot to mention, along with throwing in the peas and carrots, I cooked up, just measured out 1 cup of pasta. We had the little spirals, and I just cooked up the 1 cup of pasta and added that to our big bowl of chicken soup. So, we made it like a chicken noodle soup. And, when you have the basic thing cooked and there and ready, if you wanted to cook up some rice and have a chicken rice soup, you could put in some cream and a little, like a roux and some cream, and make it more of like a cream of chicken type soup. You can do it a lot with it once you have it canned and shelf stable and ready to serve, basically. If I was eating it and Patrick wasn't, I would put some mushrooms in it. I would, at the time of getting ready to heat it up and serve it, I could throw a little bit of those vegetables that I cooked to make the broth. Patrick is not a fan of pieces of bell pepper, so that's another part of why I strained it all out. But I could definitely drop some of that back in, just into my portion when I go to heat it up. So I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what do I do with, you get a subscription box to something like ButcherBox because you want the ethically sourced meat. To me, the fact that the animals are treated humanely is very important. You don't really find that at the grocery store. Their priority is trying to get a lower price, not that the animals were treated humanely. But it does all arrive at once, so it's good to have a plan for what meals are you going to make. Are you going to can it? Are you going to, keep it frozen? And like I said, living where I do, where power outages are just to be expected, especially now that we're going into the cold weather, I always like to, as much as possible, can the stuff that I like the way it comes out, like stew meat and chicken and pork chops, things that I want cooked, like, sort of like fall off the bone tender is how I like them cooked. Pressure canning is a perfect way to cook those things. The breakfast sausage, I will, again, like I said, that and the bacon, I tend to just cook it when we're going to use it. But you can experiment with that too. I mean, I have canned both of those things. Personally, I prefer to use them fresh, but in a bind, if you were afraid, you knew a big storm was coming and you were afraid your power was going to go out, you certainly can pressure can those things and make them shelf stable. So if you're wondering what to do, whether it's that you get a subscription box or just that you got a really good deal on something and you have a bunch of it in your freezer, hope this gives you some ideas of how to preserve it and maybe what kind of meals you want to make with it, just so you don't have such a large percentage of your proteins dependent upon refrigeration or freezing. Because A, it's a lot of money, and B, protein's an important part of your diet, and you wouldn't want to lose all that if the power was out for a few days. So keep that in mind. I hope you found this helpful, informative. Please give the video a like and share and subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you know when I do my next review, which actually I had just done one, which is why I have considerably more makeup on than I usually do. And I accidentally erased it while I was trying to upload it. So I'm going to have to do it again. As you might guess, it's about cosmetics. That's why all the eye makeup. Anyway, you can keep an eye out for that one because I'm going to have to redo it. And yeah, so hit the notification bell. You'll know when I put that one up. As always, thank you for taking the time to watch. I always appreciate that. Have a great day, and happy cooking and canning.